on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
I've seen some things, and my family has gone through quite a bit. People are like, God, you're so morbid. And I'm like, well, yeah, but this is the other part of life. Like, this does happen. Good people can do really terrible things.
Yes. Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome. It's the Self-Publishing Show with me, James Blatch.
And me, Mark Dawson. As we record this, it's a Friday and I've just opened the first beer of the weekend.
It's on the sauce already. I'm going out tonight, but I've got a lot of editing to do between now and then. And I think you prefer me to edit sober, don't you?
It's probably best, yes.
That's what Hemingway said, didn't it? He said,
edit drunk.
No.
Write drunk, edit sober.
Edit
Yeah. Edit drunk, give it to Mark who's sober.
Yes. I'm in full writing mode at the moment. Started book 4, my new Cold War espionage series with a slight pivot in my writing, a new series, new character, female lead. Is that risky?
No, not really. No, I don't think so.
I think Hollywood will like it.
Well, weirdly, I just writing about this in my newsletter. I got an email from Hollywood last night.
From
a really, really, really well-known studio, like really, really, really well-known, and saying, are the rights available for the Beatrix books? And I had to say,
they're not.
No, they're not. But which is fine. I mean, the people I work with are really great as well. But it's nice to know that it's being passed around the right places.
Yeah, that is good. Anyway, yes, I'm 7,000 words in. It always starts with me. My friend Boo Walker struggles with the first page. I think Hemingway famously did. He called it, what did he call it? The white ball. His white.
Are you comparing Boo with Hemingway?
I am.
He'll like that.
He's very Hemingway-esque. I dive into it, love it, absolutely love the beginning bit, and then get 7,000 words in and think this is all rubbish. And
that's very standard.
Yeah, going back and but I am enjoying it, and I'm loving getting into MI6 and MI5. I love doing all the research of where they were based in 1970 and what sort of things they were doing, equipment, and which I thank God for the internet to do all of that. Also watching Slow Horses, is it? The Apple
Slow Horses,
series. Which is weirdly sort of seems like it's set in the 70s or 80s, but actually is modern day. It's just he's created. Is it Mark? What's his name? Wrote the books.
Mick Herron.
Mick Herron. He's very cleverly. If you haven't read Slow Horses, a series actually of a splinter part of MI5, which is sort of where you go to die, the Siberia bit of MI5, and it's called Slough House, all invented. But that's quite clever because it's almost like writing a little period noir spy thriller in the midst of a very, because of course spying today is all electronic and modern and all the rest of it, but he's got this old fashioned, but it's a very clever way of writing it. I'm only just started the series, so we'll see how it works out. But I did share an aircraft with Gary Oldman once, so I do consider him a friend. He touched my shoulder as he walked past.
Yeah, that's right. No, I remember that. I shared an aircraft with Will Smith, so
You're lucky you didn't get slapped.
Well, and he's lucky I didn't give him COVID. Given that I was contagious at the time.
But shouldn't joke about violence. Still haven't forgiven him. Okay, right. Let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, Ads for Authors, which is the course which has enabled me to sell my books and make a profit, is open for enrollment, open for a couple of weeks. You can go to selfpublishingformula.com/ads for authors. You'll read everything that's in the course on that page. If you've got any questions about it, ask in the group, ask me or Mark or anyone else or John or Tom.
Don't ask John.
I'd love to see you in there taking part in that course. It's our flagship course, and I know I am the test of that, and I run ads and make money. We turned over, I think I can say this publicly, about a quarter of... Go on.
Yes. No, we said it now, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah, about £250,000 for Fuse Books last year, which is, from a standing start, is very good.
We've got 4 authors? 4?
3 actually at the moment now. We have
3 authors.
4, yeah. So we've vacillated a bit. We have 3, and I think probably we could also say at this stage that we are in the market for another author. I hesitate to say this because we do get inundated. But I think we're going to start romance this year, but that's already in hand, so we're not asking for romance submissions. But Kerry Donovan's books have done very well, so have a look at Kerry J. Donovan's Ryan Kane series. If you think your series is aligned with that, it's a simple thing for us.
Or mine, basically.
Or mine, or John Milton, yeah, kind of Lee Child type esque books. Yeah, get in touch. You can email us at submissions@fuse-books.com. Fuse-books.com, not fusebooks.com. Submissions@fuse-books.com. Let us know about your series, how many books are out. We're looking for somebody who has probably 4 or 5 books at the moment, minimum. I mean, 4 is probably the absolute minimum. 6 or 7 would be ideal. And somebody, basically, Mark, what do we say about this? We say somebody who's sort of given up the ghost and just doesn't want to do their own marketing, because the number one thing Mark and I will always say to anyone who comes to us is, really, it's best you market this yourself, because that's what we're advocates for. But we do understand it's not for everyone, and you might have a series that you just don't want to work on personally from a marketing point of view and work on something else, whatever. If you've got a good reason on that background, we will quiz you about that. And you think... you'd be interested in a sort of profit split deal with us, then drop us a line. And I have been looking at the charts. There's a few names I recognise who are doing quite well. Whether any of them will get in touch, I suppose I could proactively go to them. It's what publishers do, isn't it? Send emails.
If they're doing well, I wouldn't recommend they do.
Well, exactly. That's exactly what I thought. One of the things
we will turn people down if we don't think we can do better than they can. So in fact, we will turn them down if we don't think we can do double what they can do.
There's no point,
because otherwise there isn't any point. So no, we are really strict about that, but it's for it's a very good reason. We don't want anyone to be disappointed that it's not quite what they thought it would be. So feel free to drop us a line if you've got something that you think might be of interest. We'll definitely take a look at it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we can probably move on to our interview, which is with Dominika Best. So John, Tom and I met Dominika in Florida. I don't know if you met her actually, Mark. I think you were with us at the time.
Just going to say before, did I may have been zoning out at that point, but did we give the URL for the Ads for Authors course? I don't think we did. Did we?
We did, but I can give it again.
Yeah, please do, because I'm the avatar here, and it kind of passed me by. I may have been doing the washing up, but yeah, go on.
There you go. Selfpublishingformula.com/ads for authors. And actually, it's a good page to go to find out everything about the course. Open for a couple more weeks. Come and join us and get going on your author career. Now, let me go back to Dominika Best. So we interviewed Dominika. She actually is an alumni of Ads for Authors, absolutely loves it. Was happy to sit down and do wax lyrical on video for us about the course. But we got chatting to her because she's worked in Hollywood. We're talking about Hollywood today, in visual effects, VFX. Really fascinating to talk to her about that. If you're even slightly geeky about that, the way they make Hollywood films, it's a good chat. But of course, we also talk about novel writing. She's moving into novel writing and storytelling. This is somebody who's worked with some of the great storytellers in Hollywood and is using that in her own novels. Really good interview. So let's hear from Dominika, and then Mark and I will be back for a chat.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Dominika Best, welcome to the Self-Publishing Show. Nice to have you here. We're going to be talking Hollywood films and your writing, which I'm quite excited about. Now, first of all, if people are watching on YouTube rather than just listening, you're in looks like a sound booth, or is it a shed?
Well, no, it's my own sound booth, because I actually launched a podcast about a month ago, and so this is my podcast setup. So
sounds nice. No reverb or whatever they call it that sort of echoes around. Yes. But very good. Okay, Dominika, why don't you start off by just introducing yourself a little bit to the audience?
Okay, well, my name is Dominika Best, and I write under 3 pen names. My main pen name is under Dominika Best, and I write crime thrillers. I also write cozy mystery, paranormal, and I have a paranormal romance name under Nika Gray. I have been published actually since 2012, although those early books are no longer on Amazon. And before then, and I guess still am, I'm a screenwriter as well as a director, and I'm a former visual effects artist that has worked on a bunch of really big Hollywood films.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I'll just start with a little bit of the Hollywood stuff, because it's always exciting. We met in Florida. Was it Florida or Vegas? It was Florida.
No, it was Florida. It was Florida.
And I don't know if you'll be able to tell all the stories you told us, but there were quite a few involving big names in Hollywood. But nonetheless, VFX. So, I mean, it's one of those things with films now. I guess you do get the odd film that has almost none in it, but quite a few films.
Yeah, I don't think anymore. I think everything at this point has some sort of green screen on it.
These Marvel films, they're like, there must be almost nothing filmed, and then 2 years of creating it in a computer afterwards. Is that a fair assessment?
And, I mean, yes. Like, for example, the last film that I worked on was the Ang Lee film that we actually won an Oscar for while my company, Rhythm and Hughes, was going bankrupt. So I was actually out picketing the Oscars.
Oh, my goodness.
That was happening.
Bizarre. That's Life of Pi, was it?
Yeah, it was The Life of Pi. And literally the only thing that was live action in that film outside of those first kind of India shots was the boat and the kid.
Wow.
That's it. Everything else was replaced. So it was kind of funny when the cinematographer won an Oscar for that, because it was kind of like, what did you exactly light?
Yeah.
So that was one of those very strange things. But yeah, most of Marvel, like if you look, you have the actors on a stage and then everything else is green screen. Although now there are these new screens that are like, I think the new Star Wars shows have been shot this way, where you have the actors there and they're kind of around this kind of dome-like stage that has essentially the visuals projected onto it. And so they're actually in. So there's no longer compositing where you have just a green screen and you are acting on a green screen with like, a ball. You actually have the background behind you that can help you with that. And I know that they used that about 5-6 years ago and it was still a little funky. So they had to still rotoscope a lot of that. But now it's like a brand new process that you have the visuals as the actors in front.
And is this to help the actors with their performance, or is there a technical advantage to it?
Well, I'm sure it's a technical thing too, because I mean, imagine all the rotoscopers you have to have for each shot. So now if you're not having to rotoscope, then you don't have to do as hardcore compositing. Now, I haven't been in visual effects since 2012, but I'm getting back into directing now. And so I'm kind of seeing what's possible. And yeah, there's a lot of really new technology to kind of help the amount of people that you have to hire on a project. And I know that visual effects artists are having a really rough time right now with Marvel because their deadlines are hard. And also, as we talked about in Florida, nobody knows anything. Most directors don't know what they want until they see it, which is horrifying.
Right, really
you're
difficult.
On deadline, and you're having to redo all of these shots over and over again. But there is a lot of new technology to kind of help speed the process. And, there's a lot of AI talk right now, and a lot of visual effects artists and directors are like, oh my God, this could actually help out so much, because now the directors can, on their own time, figure out what they want to see. And then they can actually give the images to the artist. Whereas before, the artist would have to do like over and over and over again sketches. And then, I mean, one of the problems why Life of Pi was such a mess was because Ang Lee changed the lion. Or like, it wasn't the lion. Yeah,
tiger.
It was a lion. It was a tiger.
Yeah.
He changed the tiger in the middle of production.
Whoa.
And so they had to like redo everything. And Rhythm and Hughes, there's this whole thing with change orders. Like, they don't actually charge for change orders. So they had to eat the cost of that. And so that happens all the time. And I'm sure it happens with Marvel too. And so if the director knows what they want, which is like the first number one thing you would hope they knew, then everything will go much easier. So
wow.
It's a lot of people think these directors are like, oh, they're such visionaries. They're not, except for George Miller, who is a god.
He's okay. There's one. Good. Interestingly, the technology changes. So I remember, I'm old enough to remember the sort of video era emerging, and that's something. So we all thought, oh, we'll get VHSs at home or Betamax, whatever. But the big change actually was in filmmaking, because suddenly kids like Sam Raimi could go into the forest with their mates and a camera and do everything that it used to involve a 20-man crew to do. It was simply beyond them, and that opened indie filmmaking and changed cinema. I mean, Sam Raimi's obviously now a big director, but that's how he cut his teeth on The Evil Dead. Is this happening again with the VFX side of things? Is that going from being a big, very expensive company producing this stuff to actually starting to be available to cheaper systems?
It's in transition, I think, at this point, because there are only a couple that I have heard of these kinds of stages where you can project the images on it. Like, for example, Amazon's supposed to have a fantastic one that they use. So I don't think it's necessarily available yet. I will find out soon because I'm hoping to get into that next year.
I'm just thinking anything that requires fewer people, like the rotoscoping is basically frame by frame, isn't it? So that's very labor intensive.
Yeah, it's very labor intensive. And now, of course, there's a lot of artists all around the world, and there is cloud-based systems where you can set your renders to the cloud, and you pay for however much power you want, so you can render out your shots. So there, in some ways, it is like, if you know how to, if you know visual effects artists all around the world, you can get them to do the work. There is, again, cloud-based systems where you can just send off all of your shots to get rendered for the final images. Like, I remember when I first got into visual effects, it was, I think, 2005, 2006. I actually had to rent 4 or 5 CPUs that I brought into my house so I could render the final images for my portfolio. So like, that was just 2005. Now it's like, you can get an entire render farm in India or wherever they are, and they can do the shots for you. So in that way, it is possible, but there's still, the kind of human effort of having to do the rotoscoping and the compositing and the animation. So a lot of time when you talk to visual effects artists about, as a director, like, hey, what should I do? How should I plan the shot? They always say, try to do everything in camera, and whatever you can't, then, the little pieces, then you can kind of do that. But it's still quite expensive, even with the whole world doing it at this point in time. But I am very excited about this new technology. But as I said, it's only become viable in the last 2 years. And then I just don't know yet how available it is to people like me versus people like Ang Lee or the people who are doing Star Wars currently.
Yeah, it's almost like going back to old back projection, isn't it? If the actors are seeing this, like the 1940s driving a car with a exactly, just extremely high definition, and I don't entirely fully know the technology behind it, but it's supposed to be pretty incredible. Like, because a lot of, like, if you had a still image, it would work, but if the camera started moving, then there would start being issues, and supposedly they figured that out. So there's some things coming on the horizon that could be great. Exciting. What was first for you, screenwriting or novel writing?
It was actually screenwriting. I started screenwriting in 2005. I went to the American Film Institute for, there was a special program that was almost kind of like a scholarship year. It was called the Directing Workshop for Women. And I was able to make a short film. So I wrote screenplays for that. And that was while I was working as a visual effects artist. And then I had to have a feature, because once you have a short, you're getting into the film festivals. And when you're meeting people, they're like, okay, well, where's your feature script? And so I wrote a feature script, and I ended up getting into the Film Independent Screenwriting Lab for it, and kind of went through their process. But I tend to write very high budget things. I'm not really an indie person. So they really couldn't help me out. And then I discovered, it was right around the time that Wool came out. My husband's like, hey, have you heard about this Amazon KDP thing where people are self-publishing? And I think that was like 2011 maybe. And I was like, oh, this sounds great. Because, I had screenplays optioned, but as a lot of people I'm sure know, it's, you can get things optioned, something never goes, things fall through, the producer drops you. It's like this whole process of constantly trying to get a thing made, which is almost nearly impossible. And so I was like, oh my God, this would be fantastic. I could write. I had a bunch of screenplays that I had gotten back, and I was like, well, why don't I create my screenplays into novels so I can start making money and start creating, original IP? Because that was around the time that Hollywood was shifting into, they just wanted IP that was already existing versus spec scripts. And so, so that's how I started with the self-publishing.
And
back way long ago.
You say expensive scripts. What sort of stories were you writing? What genre?
Spy.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, because
Was there a lot of worldwide locations, glamorous locations?
Yeah, lots of worldwide. The one that I had actually gotten into the film independent with was that it was my own personal story. I'm actually originally from Poland, and my parents and myself and my sister escaped in the middle of the night under communist times in 1981.
Wow.
So we, like back in the 80s, there used to be all those films of people escaping the Berlin Wall. Well, that was pretty much what we did, but on the Polish side. So we had to go to the Czech Republic, which was Czechoslovakia at the time, and
which is also also behind the Iron Curtain.
Yeah, also behind the Iron Curtain, and we had like a midnight crossing into Austria, and we ended up in a refugee camp there. So the script was kind of the script was about my parents getting involved in Solidarity, which I found out that my dad actually was involved in Solidarity at the time, and kind of the communists coming after them, because I remember like tanks in the streets, machine guns, like it hadn't gone under martial law yet, but there was a lot of military presence in my town, and I was like 6, but I still remember that. And so my script was kind of like a sensationalized Bourne version of that story. And so I got very good notes on it, but they're like, yeah, this is like a $10 million movie with all European locations. We can't really help you with this.
Sounds great.
It's fun. I mean, I've never put into a novel. It seems almost more like a graphic novel, which has always been on my to-do list, but I haven't quite gotten to that yet. Yeah. So it's still sitting as a script.
Well, that's up my street, the Cold War stuff, and I'm now currently ruminating for my book 4 idea, which will probably be 1970 rather than 1980. But let me just ask you a couple of questions about that, because I do find that fascinating period. And I was young at the time of Lech Walesa and Solidarity, but 1982, I seem to remember, was kind of the big Gdansk strikes and stuff, so probably the year after you left. But then there's a long gap between 1989. So did they all get suppressed? I'm sketching what happened after that, before the collapse of communism.
Well, they were getting pretty much suppressed from, I think, 1979. One of the reasons why my dad said we left was because he was asked, both of my parents were electrical engineers, and he worked at a large factory overseeing quite a bit of people. And the Solidarity leaders in my town, which was Łódź, had come up to him being like, hey, we want you to organize. And literally the next day, he had been changed his position from the factory in the town, sent out 2 hours to a different factory that there was no way to get to it. Like you had to drive a car. There was no railway. It was just like he essentially got sent out to the boonies, and he got really worried that he would go to jail. Now, I think 3 months later, martial law was installed in Poland.
Right, that's what happened. Yeah, martial law.
So martial law. So I think that was there for about 2 years. And so everything got really suppressed. I mean, there was always a huge underground movement in Poland. Like that's even in World War II. Like I was a big World War II buff, and it's like the underground army. Both of my grandparents were in the underground army. Like it was just a big deal. The Polish people do not like being occupied. And so I think there was a lot of underground stuff happening, but I actually don't know that much about the Solidarity movement after martial law happened. And then of course the wall fell in 89. And then, that they also became free, as it were.
Yeah. And he's still alive, isn't he, Lech Walesa, I think?
Is he? I think he might be.
I think he is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, a very distinctive period. And the Second World War, of course, I'm not going to anorak about this all night because we could talk about it. But I do remember watching the film Katyn and not knowing a huge amount about the Katyn massacre. But if you don't know anything about that period, a very, very dark
very dark. And my
episode.
Grandfather actually, it's funny that you mentioned Katyn, because my grandfather was there.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how he survived it, and he won't say. And I actually, again, because I'm a big World War II buff, I went into the records and found him at one of the concentration camps that were about it wasn't a concentration camp. It was a POW camp in Russia that was about an hour away from Katyn. And I found his name there and said that he was shot in the head. but he had always talked about the forest, and then he would like kind of just stop talking. So I could never really get anything out of him. And I actually had a script about Canton as well before that movie came out, just because it was nobody really knew about that massacre, and it was like such a massive like obliteration of the Polish intelligentsia and officers there. So it's my grandfather was, because he was very interesting, because he actually was in a POW camp in Germany as well, and he was in Auschwitz for a while. And he actually escaped from the POW camp in Germany, and Mercedes paid him money for the rest of his life because he was making Mercedes in the POW camp.
It's part of their reparations,
Yeah.
I mean, that whole period is fascinating. If people don't know about it, it's worth at least reading up. I mean, the film is heavy going, but it's a fantastic film, I thought. But basically, it was the systematic execution of the intelligentsia, the GPs, the officers, the men with the mayors and councillors. And I think at the time,
anybody who was educated.
Right. And I think at the time, the Russians blamed it on the Nazis, but actually it came from the Politburo, right?
Yeah, exactly. And essentially what it was they were not planning to intentionally at first kill everybody. They were trying to brainwash them into the communist way of thinking so they could send them back and they could then, essentially Russia has been very good with their propaganda. So they were hoping that in brainwashing these men and essentially getting them to their side, then they could like release them and send them back to Poland, and that they would influence everybody they knew to be communists as well. That's at least from my understanding from my reading. But obviously they didn't know Polish people very well, and the Polish were like, no way, that's not happening. And so they ended up executing them. And then, yes, they blamed it on the Germans.
Yeah. So do you draw a lot of your stories from this period, this background?
I don't know as much as I draw stories, but I find that I tend to be interested in rather darker things. And I think because of that, so most of my writing is, I write serial killers, like my crime thrillers are all serial killer novels. And I have a ghost series that were actually, it's called The Ghosts of Los Angeles. And they were originally screenplays that I had done that were kind of, because, the best way to do your first feature film is to do a horror film.
Right.
I had a bunch of kind of ghost stories set in one location. And so I expanded them out into novels, and they also had serial killers, just like very dark. And I think that my background kind of makes me more comfortable with that kind of side, just because I've seen some things, and my family has gone through quite a bit. And so it's a comfort level that I have where people are like, God, you're so morbid. And I'm like, well, yeah, but this is the other part of life. Like this does happen. And it is something that also interests me because good people can do really terrible things.
Yes. Well. Yeah.
Good, quote unquote, right?
Yeah. What your crime series then is it's not cozy by the sounds of it. No. It's a sort of violent crime series.
Yes, it's violent crime. It's a police procedural set in Los Angeles with a female LAPD detective. And I take neighborhoods and just kill off a lot of people in each neighborhood.
And is that, what's your best-selling series?
That is the best-selling series. So that's the Harriet Harper thriller series. It's 6 books right now. 7th one is coming out in January. And I am taking one of the characters, an FBI profiler, and starting a new series with her. That's kind of going to be an offshoot of this first series.
And this is your first self-published book back in 2011, whenever it was your...
No. My first self-published book back in 2011 was actually a romance series that was kind of going towards the erotica, as it were. And then I published an urban fantasy series in 2015. It was Chris Fox came out with that Writing to Market book around that time. And I was trying to do like a version of that before that book came out, but I didn't actually read that much urban fantasy at the time. Like I've been a lifelong crime thriller, serial killer reader since I was like 10 years old. I discovered Agatha Christie at 9, and there was like no looking back for me.
Right.
So but thrillers back then didn't really do very well self-publishing. There was, I don't know, I didn't know of any other authors who were writing those kinds of books. And then I think it was like 2016, 2017, crime thriller indies were coming out. And I was like, you know what, I should really write what I know, which is just crime thrillers. And that actually worked out very well for me.
Yeah. And in terms of the writing, Dominika, I mean, a story is a story. What are the crossovers between screenplay writing and novel writing? Are there advantages, do you think, from starting with screenplay and moving to novels that we could perhaps learn from?
Oh, absolutely. Because screenplays are all scenes and they're action. Like, so it's dialogue and action, and you have to be able to tell your story. You know, when they say you got to write, what is that phrase? That you need to write like an active scene. And a lot of people get stuck in the heads of their characters. Whereas screenplays is all you got to do, tell the story through dialogue and action. And so my first books actually were very fast reads because I didn't know how to do the thoughts inside the head very well. And so I had to do quite a bit of research of how to kind of essentially create those inner thoughts. So in that way, you have a very tight plotted novel if you're going from screenplay to a novel, because your dialogue is very on point, because your dialogue is really telling what the character is feeling and also moving the story forward. And then you have the action portion that is always moving the story forward as well. So it's fantastic. Novels are much easier to write than screenplays because you have a lot more time and you can go into the character's head. And so you can do a lot of more telling, right, than showing, whereas screenplays is like you have to be on the screen. Like if it's not in the dialogue or in the action, and then of course in the actor's performance, you don't have a story. Yeah. So novels are much easier in that way, except for there's a lot more words. Yes. So
how many words is an average screenplay?
I think 12,000.
Wow. Including the dialogue. That is the dialogue.
Including like everything.
That is amazing.
Including the dialogue. Yeah. So versus a novel, but in that 12,000 words, you have everything. Yeah. Right. So it's I
find it's quite interesting because quite a lot of I've noticed quite a lot of novellas get turned into films. That sort of makes sense now. The novels probably have too much in them, and we know
it's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, novels tend to do, I find that they tend to do the best as TV shows because you have entire seasons to go through. Because I was looking at, we just finished watching The Peripheral, and I think I haven't totally finished the book, but I bet you they've only done like a poor portion of that book. Right. Even though I do know that they made a lot of changes. But again, like when you get that world of the novel, then that just works really well with a TV series versus a movie, which you only have like 90 to 120 minutes if you're not doing a Marvel thing. But if you think of all the Marvel stuff, those come from comic books, and the comic books, there's not that much words in there either. Right.
No, they're pretty bare. I was thinking about this the other day, this sort of, a clunky way of when films do it wrong normally is you have this clunky internal monologue from a narrator, which famously they ruined the original cut of Blade Runner with. And the better way of doing it is showing it, obviously, what happens. But you do get to do something in films which I think is hard to do in books. And I think I write quite visually. I think I'm very dialogue heavy, and I write thinking, how's this going to look if it was a scene? Which I was told ages ago is a good way of doing it. But in film, you can show somebody brooding. Mm-hmm. You can show them in a particular mood, pensive, nervous, a good director will show the little hand tapping on the sort of nervous involuntary movements, and then them coming to a decision and leaving a room without a word. And that's good filmmaking, right? When you pick up those small details and that tells the story. I find that's quite difficult to do writing a novel.
No, well, absolutely, because you have to essentially create that picture for your reader through your words. Whereas, again, with the screenplay, you also have to remember, like, that's the blueprint, but then there's so many different layers that come on top of that. So when you get the actors that are involved in the screenplay, then they bring their own life experience. And so they take the words that you've written on the screenplay and kind of flesh them out into all these little movements of body. Like, for example, I think I remember reading that Meryl Streep, like when she reads a screenplay, she figures out how the character walks. Like, is it slumped over? It's, her shoulders are back. So even just like kind of that self-expression of the actor on a screen, it just extrapolates whatever was in the screenplay and just brings so much richness to it, as well as the music, the, cinematography, the director and his ideas. So even though the screenplay is the blueprint, there's so many other people that go on top of that. Whereas in a novel, you're essentially all those people, right? Yeah. You're the cinematographer talking about kind of the mood of the place. You have to show how your character like moves their body and reacts to the person. Like, so in the novel, you have to put that all in a very nice way without getting boring.
Yes.
So, in that way, it's...
But it is a good way of doing it, right? To visualize your scene as if it was playing out on a, what music would be playing, what would the weather be like, what would the lighting, would it be a dark room, be a light room, and then create the scene with words, but without boring people to death in the process. But no, it's an obvious thing to say, really, isn't it? That you should be able to visualize the scene, and if you can't, if it's not moving along, the scene probably shouldn't be there. And in filmmaking, scenes get cut before they even get filmed,
all the time.
And even when they're filmed, will sometimes just get pulled out of films because they're not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, they say that the script is completely rewritten again in the editing portion. So the editor rewrites the movie per what was actually filmed. So there have definitely been times where an actor takes a character in a completely different direction and the film is completely cut up in a totally different way because it's changed the story. So you have the screenplay that you shoot, and then once you get it into the editing room, then you're just recutting it totally again. So you have the screenplay as kind of like a touch point, but then it's really about the footage and what did you get into the footage and what did the actors bring, and then you just recut it again. So editing almost in its own way is, again, like a rewriting of the movie to what it can be. And there's been ways that I think they've had, like the director's cuts that come out all the time, right? Yeah. That totally can change a movie. Like, actually, it's funny you mentioned Blade Runner. That is like my most favorite movie of all time outside of Alien. Those are like the two reasons. Alien and Blade Runner was the reason why I got into filmmaking. And you see all the Blade Runner director's cuts and like what the narration did or how they stuck that end. Like they're going over the trees, right? Like it just totally changes the mood of the film. So that's, again, with film, it's such a process that you're going through and that the story is ever changing. Whereas with the novel, it's, it is what it is.
I suppose there is an analogy, but sort of like the first draft might be the filming, and then you can revise it and rewrite it. And I mean, I do that. My first draft throws up things that change in the revision side of things. And Jenny Nash, who I'm actually interviewing tomorrow, talks about doing exactly that, with the amber light system, sort of like that, I guess. But you're doing all these parts. You're the director, you're the rewriter. You can rewrite the script for the second draft. Talking of which, let's talk a bit about your writing process. So for novel writing, do you plot? Because I imagine screenwriting probably is plotted.
Yeah, it's plotting. I'm a big plotter. I get my structure down first, and once I get the structure down, then I write, decide which POVs I'm going to do. And plus, because I write crime, I usually go from the back, like from the end. So I know who my killer is, what drives him to kill. I know all of the victims, how he met the victims, and then I kind of work backwards to kind of the beginning, like what's the first body that's going to be found? What are the clues that are going to be peppered in to kind of get my detective going, forward? And one of the things that I've done in the specific series is I always have a POV of one of the victims that survives, because in a lot of books you have, and it's typically women, just get massacred, right? And so with this series, I always have a POV of one of the victims that is a survivor that kind of overcomes this killer and hopefully kills him at the end. Because, in a lot of these books, the the detective kills the killer, and I have some of my victims kind of try to get their power back, and just to kind of, see what it feels like to be stalked or to be in this terror. So that's kind of one of the things that I have done in this specific series. So yeah, so I figure out all the bad stuff, and then I work backwards and kind of go through the structure and kind of put them into place for pacing. And the clue trail, and then I just write it. So there's a lot of pre-work, and I'm usually only do 2 or 3 drafts, because I've done so much of the pre-work. And again, like coming from a screenplay background, like the structure set, like I kind of know the kind of novel that I'm writing, so I know how to mix the POVs, and the pacing as well, like that the pace quickens at the end, so you start getting like much shorter chapters, and a lot of, like, my third act is definitely much more action oriented, kind of like you would see in a film. So there's always kind of like a big battle sequence, if you will. Yeah. So
hopefully not as overwhelming as the Marvel battle sequence that comes at the third point of the film. I frankly just look at my watch and think, we've got 12 minutes of this, and then the film can start again.
That, and also it's like, oh my God, how much damage and people are you killing in this? Like, oh my God. It's just, I
do wonder if they're going to come back a bit at Marvel, because they've got to this such a big scale film that's just, I find it a bit overwhelming. I know lots of people love it. My kids argue with me when I talk about this, but the Guardians of the Galaxy films for me were the best of that bunch, because they're much more character based than the others.
Based and everything.
Yeah, but anyway.
And I don't know if I told you that in Florida, but that is my goal, is to direct a Marvel film.
Wow.
Like I just I got, I think, another 20 years, because I have to make my first feature first, but I have the visual effects background. I mean, I have 12 years of visual effects.
You're in a really good position.
So it's just a matter of doing those first features.
And Dominika, I feel that you will have a character driven Marvel film for us.
Most likely, yes. And it's
15-minute battle sequence.
Yeah, exactly. And it's helpful because my husband is like the biggest Marvel star. He Marvel, I guess, not star, but Marvel collector. He started collecting Marvel comics in 1968. He had all of the originals, so he knows all the stories as well. So he's kind of like, you can pick his brain on like, okay, what happened with the Fantastic Four in the 70s? And he's like, let me tell you.
Yeah, I have loved the darker stuff that's come out of that universe in DC and Marvel. Anyway, we're back to films. Actually, I was going to ask you about your films. You say you're going back into directing. Is that going to be with your own penned stuff?
Yes, actually, I am right now in the process of writing a psychological thriller called The Popular Wife. And me and another one of my director friends, we're actually going to do a radio play podcast based on our books. So I'm writing the novel right now. I'm going to turn it into a radio script. She has actors lined up to do all the voices, and then from that, I'm going to try to make a feature of that. It's a psychological thriller set in a beach town, and it's kind of a couple trying to kill each other. So I think it's a small budget enough that I'm hoping to be able to shoot it by the end of the year. So kind of, it's going to be a process, but I want to make sure that the story is strong enough that the audiences will come, which is why I want to do the novel and then the radio play. And then finally, the actual.
And that'll be a full length feature?
Yeah, full length feature.
Yeah. So can I ask what sort of budget you have to come up with to make a feature?
Well, it really depends. Like, I have friends who have made feature films for $70,000 that have played on Netflix and Amazon to rave reviews. And that's like micro budget. I have other friends who their first features were like 250, 300,000. Okay. It really just depends on how many locations you have, how many actors you have, how small of a crew you can hit up. And, again, if you don't have to do any visual effects, that's also very helpful. So I don't necessarily want to do a micro budget of 70,000, but I want to see how much, how resonant this story is, both through, how many sales I can get for the novel itself and put the sales towards the film as well as the radio play. So I'm not sure. I'd like to have a budget of 250K. but we'll see. Like I can definitely go down to 70 if need be, because again, it's probably going to be like two main actors, and I have a bunch of friends here I live in Los Angeles, so I know a lot of actors, and I'm hoping to write something that they can really sink their teeth into and show their acting chops.
Yeah.
Since then, that's why I chose a psychological thriller, because it's really going to be the two actors, like.
And the play side of things, would that, you say radio play, but that would be a sort of podcast type release, or would you actually find a radio station in America? I don't know if radio plays are a thing in the States.
No. It would be a podcast release. You know how they're doing the fiction podcasts right now?
Yeah.
So we have a sound editor lined up, and a music supervisor, and then 3 actors. So, it'll fully sound like one of those old school radio dramas from the 40s. Where you have all the sound effects and everything.
Well, radio plays are quite big in the UK. I mean, they play out every day of the week on Radio 4. In fact, most British writers have cut their teeth writing plays for the radio.
Is that right? That's pretty great. Yeah. I actually haven't listened to. I have started a true crime podcast to help with the kind of bringing in more readers to my books. But this was actually something that my director friend was like, I really want to do this, and I bet you Dominika can figure out how to do this. So she asked me to come on board. But I think that fiction podcasts are pretty big in America, from what she said.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited. I'm really excited about the podcast and voice medium. I think that there's definitely storytelling going into that arena as far as voice. Sounds kind of like the future. A lot of people that I know listen to audiobooks only. They don't actually read the books. So I'm kind of trying to move really hard into that space as well with my stories. So I'm excited to see how this will go. We're hoping to launch it in February, but yeah.
Gosh, that'll be soon.
We'll see how that.
But you haven't written the novel yet.
I'm in the middle of it.
Okay.
I'm a very fast writer.
Yeah.
I write like about 5,000-6,000 words a day.
Oh, you do? Wow.
Yeah. So I can go through, and again, it's like once I have that outline and that structure, I can just go. Like I'm really good when I have like defined boundaries.
Yes. And where do you write? Not in your sound booth there, is it?
No. Behind the sound booth in my desk.
Okay.
So,
what's your, can I ask a few questions about your writing routine? I'm always interested to know how people approach this. Do you write in Scrivener? Do you get up early and write? Do you write in bursts, or do you write in long periods?
I actually dictate. So
okay.
I'm a dictator. So I write in the mornings. I dictate for about an hour and a half, and then I spend another hour cleaning up my dictation. But I find that I get into flow much faster when I dictate. Now, I've dictated my last 10 books, so my brain totally like switches into that mode very nicely, and then I get into flow within like 5 minutes. Like I'm just in the story, essentially telling the story, which is great. I get about 94-95% accuracy rate. I use Dragon on a PC, so it's pretty clean. And then I'm typically always having to add place and description. That's because again, I have a screenwriting like brain, so I am able to dictate the action and the dialogue fantastically. And then I have to kind of go back and add what the people look like and what room they're in.
It doesn't sound like you have to add too much afterwards. You have a lot of that already done.
Exactly. And so that's like 3-4 hours. And then the rest of the day, I'm doing all the marketing stuff that we have to do these days.
Yeah. And talking of marketing stuff, what does that consist of for you? A mailing list, and you run ads?
Run ads, mailing list, and I'm moving heavily into TikTok. And then, as I said, I've started a podcast, so I have a YouTube channel running. I have a blog going, as I said, is true crime. I have the first 5 episodes out. I was doing the Long Island serial killer, which is a case that has not been solved. And that actually ties into my book 7 that is coming out in January of my series, because it's a book about sex workers being killed here in Los Angeles. So I'm kind of constantly like doing the video portion, Instagram, kind of like doing the social media between the true crime and my novels, running ads.
You do a
and
lot.
TikTok. I do a lot. Yes.
Is the true crime podcast out yet, or are you still recording that?
No, it's out. Dominika Best presents The Deviant Mind, and it's a true crime podcast. The 5th episode is actually coming out today or tomorrow. And it's doing great. I'm really excited. And plus, it's so much easier to it's hard kind of plugging books, right? Being like, oh, buy my book, here's my book. Where this is more interesting because you can tell a story and then you can plug it into how your story was, inspired by things were similar to it. So it's kind of an easier way for me for content marketing, because I feel like it's easier for me to tell that story than being like, buy my book.
Yes.
It's about a serial killer.
A bit more of a subtle way is usually a better way. Great. It was great talking to you, Dominika. We haven't mentioned your paranormal romance or your cozy paranormal and paranormal romance.
Cozy paranormal. Yeah.
It sounds like your first love is the harder boiled stuff, though.
Yeah, I do like my dark stuff. As I said, like as a director, like I love sci-fi and fantasy. Like my short film was kind of a Pan's Labyrinth light. Right. Was really because I tried to bring my visual effects experience into that. So when it comes to my directing, like I'm very interested in the genre stuff because you can do so much visually with that, which is why The Peripheral was fantastic. I loved watching that. But when it comes to my writing, like I'm just like my serial killers. I need a dead body in there. Somebody needs to be, solving it. And then because things are a little like, it's kind of hard life, like living right now in the world. It's a little dark. And so it's kind of nice to go into the more happy romance, as it were, to write. So it's kind of almost like a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Now, all of my stuff is on Fae, which is still a little dark because the Fae is a little dark. But again, it's romance. People are like falling in love. So that's been kind of a palate cleanser for me. Even though I don't read as much, I watch everything there is as far as like paranormal when it comes to TV and film. So that's kind of interesting. But I have started reading in that genre as well, as I'm kind of picking up doing more writing with it.
I've got to be honest, Fae is one of those words that I've seen. I see it written. I see it on books. I know Caroline and Suzanne here in the UK write Fae, but I don't really know what Fae is. Can you explain?
Fairies.
Oh, it's fairies. It's just
it's fairies.
But is it darker fairies than the?
The fairies were pretty dark if you look into the fairy tales of the Scottish and Irish, the Seelie and the Unseelie. They're pretty dark and nasty little creatures. So I kind of go towards that, kind of the old folklore of the British Isles, as it were.
Not so much Tinkerbell, but more.
No. More kind of like demon-like unseelies that steal little children.
Yes, they were dark. Those fairy tales, terrifying. I hope kids still get exposed to them though, because there's nothing wrong with being a little bit sinister stuff.
My kid does. Yeah. Poor child.
I bet. Can't get away from it. Well, that's brilliant. You are a very busy person, Dominika, and you've got so much going on. Well, we look forward to. The True Crime podcast. I think would probably go down well on TikTok as well if you could serialize it on TikTok, because there's a married couple I think do true crime stuff on TikTok, and they pop up on my feed all the time, my For You page.
Yeah, I started my TikTok there. I'm still kind of trying to figure out my video portion. Yeah, I love the light you have behind there. I have been trying to find something similar just to kind of make the visual look a little bit more interesting. But I started posting on TikTok. It's just, I've just started up this whole machine in the last like month and a half. And I've been trying to essentially kind of stabilize everything. So, I like every week I have a system, and I'm still kind of creating the system because systems is the thing that I'm not the strongest at. So it's kind of it has been a little bit haphazard because I am doing so much, but hopefully everything will kind of smooth out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, the TikTok is great. And there's a huge true crime community there. The interesting thing with TikTok is I know that the romance writers are just killing it right now on TikTok, because Book Talk is just like, there's so many romance readers on there. I haven't really found that many crime readers, and maybe they just, They haven't congregated yet under the book talk hashtag, but there's a ton of true crime people there. So I'm kind of trying to plug into that and being like, oh, by the way,
yeah,
I got these serial killer books.
Well, that is a good way of doing it. I mean, it's what I do with military aviation, so it's not really a book talk thing, but it's dovetails with what I write. And so it's a lower percentage of your potential audience are going to be people who could buy your book, whereas if it was pure book talk, it'd be a higher percentage. But you have a much bigger audience,
right?
So yeah,
exactly.
that could work for you. And so true crime is big. Great. Well, I'll tell you what, Dominika. Here's the deal. At some point in the maybe 20 years' time, when the UK premiere of your Marvel film happens, can me and Mark come and walk on the red carpet with you?
Absolutely.
I'm very excited about that.
I am very too. I'm really excited to get back into that world now that I have some IP in under my belt, as it were. But yeah, we'll see. 2023 better be much better than 2022.
Yeah, well, here's keeping everything crossed. Well, if hard work pays, it should be.
Exactly.
Exactly. Dominika, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so very much for having me. And sorry I didn't get to tell too many of my Hollywood stories, but I'm going to say George Miller knows everything. He's the brilliant director. He's the best guy I've ever worked with. He's the one. It's nice to finish on a positive note because there were quite a few interesting, less positive stories, as I recall. Exactly. But that's for another beer in somewhere sunny. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. You have a great rest of the day, and thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
There you go. Dominika Best talking to us from, I guess, California. Forgot to ask, or I can't remember now. But anyway, really good chat. So she was talking about, it was quite hard to explain, but you get basically the way that they film a lot of films now, particularly these Marvel films that you love. Lots of green screen in the set. So you walk into the soundstage where they film and it's all green screen and there's people with poles with tennis balls on them. And all this stuff's going to become Groot or whatever in the final thing. But the actors are working with tennis balls and green screen. Obviously, it would be better for the actors if they could work with something they could see. So that's what they're moving to, some sort of incredible screen technology where that stuff's there and interacting with them, which is amazing. And actually, it goes back a little bit to back projection, to the old 1940s driving a car and a screen behind you. It's sort of that theory, but done with massive amounts of processing power. So she's talking about that being the next big breakthrough in Hollywood. And when that miniaturizes and becomes something that you can operate from an iPad and a PC, will change independent filmmaking and make all that very expensive VFX much more widely available, which I thought was very interesting.
Absolutely, yeah, I do remember Dominika now. I remember we had a drink at the Tiki Bar, and yes, it was a very enjoyable chat with her. So yeah, good, great to get her on the show. Yeah,
well, maybe she'll end up directing the blockbuster based on the novel by Mark Dawson or James Blatcher. That would be annoying for you, wouldn't it, if I got picked up and made?
Unlikely, but possible.
Sounds like a challenge. So the trouble is I'm writing a spy thriller not because there's a big spy thriller series on there at the moment, but kind of the time it takes to get a book out, they'll be on to something else next year. But you've got to predict, you've got to think what they're going to be doing in 2 years' time. Okay, right, I think that's it. Just a reminder that our flagship course, which teaches authors how to market their books with paid ads and drive sales. Ads for Authors, Mark Dawson's Advertising for Authors, is open at the moment. And you can learn all about it at selfpublishingformula.com/ads for authors. I think this air conditioning unit is drying me. I've spent a lot of hours in this office in the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
I think this air conditioning unit is drying me out. There you go.
It's possible. Well, yes, we can get out of the office on Sunday because we're going to see a football match, aren't we, in London?
We're going to the North London Derby, mate, aren't we? We're not going to see Derby. It's confused the Americans because they think we're going to see Derby. We're going to see Tottenham versus Arsenal, which is among the big derbies you get in the UK. And I have
a big game this year. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this year it is going to be a big game. So Arsenal top of the table, aren't they? Yes, I did go to Arsenal. Saw them against Everton at the Emirates Stadium, and the next week was Tottenham, and all the singing and chanting before, after, during was about the Tottenham game. It's a big game for them. We're going to be sitting with the posh people We might meet some ex-Arsenal. Oh no, Tottenham fans. We're going to Tottenham, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to
Spurs legends. We'll see Glenn
Tottenham.
Hoddle and Chris Waddle maybe. They'll do a song for us.
Diamond Lights. Yeah.
Diamond Lights. Is that what
Probably,
they did?
It was, yeah. Probably not. But we can hope. Aussie Idealies is what I'm hoping for.
That'd be good. Yeah, that'll be excellent. I'm looking forward to that. I'll kick back and have a beer on Sunday. Watch some top football.
I'm actually. I was staying in a hotel on Sunday night, so I'm going to have lots of beers. I am, yes.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
I was about to ask you off air if you want to stay at a nice hotel. I can't because I've got the railways are a bit of a nightmare in the UK at the moment, and there's it is running but with a bus, and I'm not going to be getting a bus, which means I won't be able to drink, and I'm not getting a bus, so I'm going to stay in a hotel, go back Monday morning.
Yeah, sounds good. Yes, I mean Cambridge versus Morecambe's off tomorrow, so I'm quite pleased. I have got this film match to look forward to on Sunday because obviously
I've also then on 6:00 on Sunday is the Dolphins against the Bills in the playoffs, and that is going to be an absolute massacre. So I am I don't actually mind that we're going to be that's going to overlap a little bit because I think that would be unpleasant to watch.
I thought the Dolphins were doing all right this season.
They were until literally everyone is injured. Almost everyone. Anyway, this is terribly boring. Yes, it
really is boring now. But if you've got this far, well done. We should give a prize to people who got this far. Okay, right. Thank you very much. All that remains for me to say then is it's a goodbye from him.
And a goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishing show. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with the Self-Publishing Show.